You know, I try not to be too negative on this channel, unless we're talking about this video. That one's kind of, actually, this one as well. And come to think of it, there may have been a plus there was this also Okay, after careful review, I've come to the conclusion that I am a liar. I think it's important to be critical though, and not just blanket positive, especially for stuff that we're excited about from creative teams that have a lot of potential. Sometimes it actually helps the project directly. For example, a lot of people thought Forspoken had way too much peppy contextual dialogue for its own good, me included, and that directly led to a delay in the developer saying, and I'm paraphrasing here, oopsies. They directly addressed the criticisms and said that they'd work on fixing some of the bigger issues, and in the case of it being too late for the studio to change it this time, feedback on these games showings can help them gauge what's tracking with the audience and what isn't, so they can take that into consideration with the next project. And the only reason that I give this little preamble is to make it clear that I'm not here to rip Redfall to shreds. There's some stuff that I like about it, and before the delay this was one of my most anticipated games of this entire year, but ever since we got our first official look at gameplay a couple of weeks back, I haven't been able to shake the feeling that this is the worst version of what Redfall could have possibly been. When it was announced, I was excited because I thought Arcane would be able to impose their creativity and charm on the co-op horde shooter genre, but as it turns out, the genre's kind of imposed itself onto them. I want to start with what I liked about this showcase before we talk about where it faltered, because there is some merit to what we were shown. For example, the dog is kind of cute. I have run out of things to say. Okay, seriously, the thing that I think could wind up being the X factor for this game, the one big design decision that makes it easier to ignore some of the other shortcomings, is the emphasis on verticality. The streets seem to be lined with a lot of perching spots and rooftops. A few of them are already shown to be accessible and advantageous, especially with the range class, and I assume that the same can be said with most tall structures. While Redfall's looking like the biggest departure from Arcane's previous stuff, one of their staples is being able to quickly get onto and explore rooftops and alternate routes into areas, and that seems to be one of the things that could carry over here. That type of access, especially with at least some amount of ease, enough that they seem to view it as a legitimate playstyle, spaces out the combat zones that they showed in the trailer a little bit more than other games like this. And that doesn't just go for the tall buildings. One of the powers that they showed off in the trailer is this weird purple jump pad. What is this thing, like a phone booth, a gazebo, like an elevator? It's an elevator. I just answered my own question. Why would it have been a gazebo? What looks like a fairly tame power in the grand scheme of things might actually be the perfect support skill in a game like this. Think about the main issue when you get overwhelmed in this style of shooter. It's not like when you get overwhelmed in a cover shooter where you can just focus on enemies at specific angles while others aren't as high priority right now, or a game like Doom where you can just fling yourself from corner to corner like a psychopath. In a game more akin to Left 4 Dead, if you're overwhelmed, you're getting backed into a corner, you're being herded in by everything around you, so abilities like this that can catapult you out of that and shift your position are a nice counter to that problem. Again, it just spaces stuff out and stops the gameplay from being too horizontal. The one possible downside to this that was present in the demo is that everything might be a bit too spaced out. I don't want to get into the enemies and their abilities too much right now because I'll get into that in the negative section, but for melee-centric baddies that are most effective in groups, spreading them thin can remove a lot of the tension in the gameplay. A lot of the outdoor encounters felt like they weren't as heavily occupied as they should have been. I guess I can chalk it up to this potentially being early game and maybe even a lower difficulty. I've started to notice that a lot of gameplay demos look like they're playing on easy. I don't get the logic there, but it is what it is. But too much floor spacing can lead to a less exciting experience. Just ask the Dallas Mavericks offense. Oh, shout out to the two people who got that joke. I also like the different classes. They all look like viable playstyles and have a feeling that we haven't seen their full arsenals just yet. I love when a game doesn't have a clear best option to pick from and you can just see yourself in any role. Personally, this stealth range class is speaking to me, but I could see myself with a Robo Dog or some classic Arcane powers. I do want to point out though, I understand the need to showcase these abilities, but why is this man turning invisible when he's already outside of the view cone of any of these enemies? What is the purpose of this? My guy turned on You Can't See Me Turbo Ultra Edition. My brother in Christ, they already could not see you. In an interview with GameSpot, one of the game's directors mentioned how playing solo won't actually mean getting paired up with bots. You would just go into the world alone and experience it by yourself, and while we've seen other co-op shooters pull a similar card while having a flat narrative, this does give me some confidence in the story of Redfall. It looks like something that they want to emphasize, and there does seem to be a lot of potential in the world building and antagonists and everything. I want to hear more about it before I'm convinced, but this also seems like an element where I think the game can shine. Unfortunately, while the wider threads might be worth experiencing, a lot of the moment-to-moment story stuff that we've seen lacks a certain punch because of the shaky dialogue, and with that, let's justify this title. Quirky teens and silly memes. I guarantee you those words are plastered in the conference room of every single co-op shooter development studio that comprises of a bunch of 40-somethings sitting in a circle arguing about which 10-year-old post on Facebook is the most culturally relevant today. Characters that constantly talk and act uber relatable in the most corporately designed way is not a prerequisite for your video game, guys, I promise. Not only did Redfall have the potential to be different from those other cookie-cutter shooters because it brought in a new, less brainless threat in vampires instead of zombies, but it had the potential to be different because it was developed by Arcane, the only AAA studio that's been pushing immersive sims, a studio that has a history of gloomy atmosphere and even sci-fi horror. And to be clear, I fully support developers wanting to break free from their comfort zone and make new things. As much as it sucks when they move away from less represented genres, there's always a way to shift directions while maintaining your identity. Housemarque moved away from the dying arcade genre and made Returnal, which is so different but still has a foot in that arcadey, bullet-hell door, but in a lot of ways, especially in tone, Redfall looks like it's regressing to the mean of the industry. Arcane's games never featured the most polished dialogue, but there was an element of consistency and uniqueness within each of their products. Even Deathloop, with its more in-your-face attitude, implemented the right story, art direction, music, and animations to back it up. The conversations between Colt and Juliana can be distracting and a little bit much at times, but the exchanges had the speed and aggression to them that felt different, and it revolved around these two characters who had been bickering for decades. Redfall's dialogue so far has not only clashed with the world, which, I get it, juxtaposition, but it was also juxtaposition when the last 137 games did it, so I feel like a switch up might be in order, but it also comes off as a desperate attempt to relate to a younger audience. Lady, there is a vampire apocalypse in the world. How are we talking about student debt right now? I believe the list of priorities has shifted. There's plenty of
Of course. Oh, shit. Oh god, oh god, oh god, oh god.
To fill in the empty spaces, which I guess games just love doing now, even though everyone universally agrees it's too much. And then of course we have stuff like this.
Oh shit, there's more!
Who are you talking to? This is what I mean by the genre imposing itself onto Arcane. It looks like a game without any real identity, and that's a shame for a studio that I'd argue had one of the strongest and most beloved identities out there. And of course, we could see more of that popping up in the full release. I am hoping that's the case, but this was Redfall's big moment in the spotlight, a chance to show us the truest reflection of what this game was, and it's a bummer to see this unnecessary banter and faux millennial writing and line deliveries take up so much real estate. Also, speaking of line deliveries, I gotta say, I love Yuri Lowenthal. Not only is he potentially the best rendition of Spider-Man to date, but he's also Ben 10. Like, this man is everything I've dreamed of being. However, I seem to have found the one thing that he can't do: a southern accent.
Feelings mutual, I guess. Let's just get this done. On my mark.
Hey, that's just Spider-Man in a cowboy hat. Listen, I love the guy, but man, his voice was distracting in this trailer. I don't know if that was just me.
Ghosting out.
The more mundane tone is also reflected in the presentation of this game. I think the interiors look somewhat interesting, although the textures seem weirdly smooth. But once they head outside, it's just generic video game city number 816 out there. There's a carnival area that could have been really fun with Arcane's level design. Dishonored 2 is out here with some of the greatest conceptual levels ever created. Prey creates such an immersive space station to explore, but this just doesn't pop like it should, and it feels a lot like set dressing. I understand that out of everything, this is probably the thing that's hardest to judge based on just this demo, but it was something that stood out to me regardless. Or I guess it didn't stand out to me. I would have loved if the whole blocking out the sun idea led to a powerful hue casting itself onto the scenery, making everything look way cooler through just color and lighting alone, but it doesn't seem like that's the case. Everything just looks normal. Arcane has moved and shifted over the years, but I don't think at any point they were accused of being normal, which is maybe the biggest thing that bums me out about this showing. Before we wrap up though, I got one more thing that left me wanting in this trailer, and in my notes I have it as "Vamps ain't vampy." I swear to God, I'm gonna win a Pulitzer Prize for these videos one day. But seriously, why are the vamps not vampy? At least to my eye, the most that we get is some light teleportation. That's cool, I guess, but give them some powers of their own, not just blood pustules. I want to see some Reduvia blood attacks. I'd love to see an enemy that could bite you and you'd go into a frenzy mode, having minimal control over your player for a brief period with friendly fire turned on, so you get to struggle to fight against it as you uncontrollably turn on your teammates. That would be a cool play on the whole vampire idea. I think it'd also be cool for Arcane Austin to implement the mimic mechanic from Prey, where they hid in like household objects. Maybe some vampires are able to cloak themselves in shadows with a fleeting visual cue alerting you to their potential position, and if you don't take care of them, they get the jump on you like stalkers in The Last of Us. I feel like I've said this a few times already, but yeah, this stuff could be in the final game, and fingers crossed that it is, but all we were actually shown was a bunch of brainless bad guys. It'd be a real waste for the vampires in this game to just be a new skin slapped onto zombie-type enemies. I guess the big difference between the two horde types might come in the story side of things. I'm assuming this here is the main villain. I might be wrong, but hopefully hopefully there's some kind of alpha vampire that takes on the role of a more direct villain, and this horde can lead to some more notable back and forth since they're more conscious than zombies are. Not conscious in the sense of like they're not gonna drop a 12-song LP about the realities of classism in America, just as in like they don't have mush for brains. While there might be a difference here as it relates to the story side of things though, I do want more variety and originality with the enemy types in the gameplay, otherwise they really left some potential on the table. Shooting seems fine, I really don't have much to say about it, it's what you'd expect. Yeah, I think I'm tapped out. As you can tell, I've got a real back and forth going on with this game. There's some promising stuff and a lot that I'm not fond about, and I'm just bummed that this game isn't shaping up to be as unique as I thought it might be. I guess it's partially on me for hoping that a studio with the pedigree of Arcane could come in here and revitalize a long stagnant genre, especially with the amount of funding that they undoubtedly have for this, but it still sucks to see how standardized a lot of this looks. Seems like opinions are really split on this one though, so let me know what you think in the comments. Is this what you were expecting? Is it exciting for you? Are you a little disappointed? If you're new here, subscribe. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace.